At the time, there wasn't so much information on how to build a company. And I just maybe cocky or confident, but thought I could figure it out. And the truth is, a lot of it is just figuring it out, just still today, every day, just figuring it out. There's not a really good roadmap that exists for Papa. There's the roadmap maybe of things that worked or didn't work or Paul Graham's isms. But funny enough, we were actually in Y Combinator with Paul Graham. He was there for that summer, and we actually took the opposite of his advice, which ended up being right.
You're listening to 0 to 1, the podcast where future unicorns get a start. Every week, we sit down with the founders actually building, the ones turning scrappy ideas into real-world companies. No fluff, no cliches, just raw insights, hard lessons, and the playbooks that VCs and top operators don't share publicly. We're your hosts, Jonathan, Matteo, and Gary. Three friends obsessed with turning 0 into 1. Ready to build something legendary? Let's dive in.
Really excited to have you here, Andrew. Just for the intro, we're just gonna reuse the blogger we used before, but yeah, can you? So for our listeners who don't know you yet, what's the one-liner you used to describe Papa and your role as a founder?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the call today. I'm Andrew Parker, founder and CEO of Papa. Started Papa about 8 years ago to help my grandpa and have scaled across the United States to provide in-home companionship and support.
So you launched Papa from a deeply personal place. I think your grandfather was dementia. Am I right?
Yes,
And
he had dementia.
what made you realize this needed to become a real business and not just something you did for your family and for a personal problem?
Well, at the time I was working at MD Live, the telehealth company, and I learned the ins and outs of healthcare, but I really realized the need of the program when my grandpa needed help. And so I started with him and I found a random pal. I went to Facebook and said, who wants to help Papa? And not a million people applied, but a few did. And I connected him to a pal. And frankly, he absolutely loved it. And I think that was the big aha moment for me. If I could get Papa to like it, I could get the world to like it. And so I realized that if I focus on it full time, I can make something of it. Or at least I thought that was true. It wasn't as easy as I thought in those early moments, but it really inspired me. I think it's important to think about how you could solve a problem in a very small way. And so it works really well small. It could work.
Yeah, it's what I think Paul Graham and especially Brian Chesky really emphasize on that phase of the phrase of do something that maybe 100 people love before you're thinking about scaling it. It's better to have something that even 10 people love than 100 than a million people who just like you.
That comment inspired me before I applied to Y Combinator, which I never heard of before. I wasn't really in the startup world in that way. And I thought, well, we didn't get 100 that like it, but we have 5. And that's enough for me. So I quit my job, which I found out from others isn't as easy of a decision. But for me, I'm so passionate about it and I believed in it and I believed in myself. And I just jumped out into this whole time.
It's amazing how much passion came into this project, and 5 is a very good number. I can confirm.
5
Let's
is good. They
maybe
loved it. 100% success.
amazing. So maybe let's jump back through to the early days of Papa. So could you guide us about how you create about what the first version of Papa looked like and what you prioritize when building?
Yeah, when I started Papa, I didn't know much about building apps, so I wanted to build an app, which isn't exactly the right thing to do. You should try to solve your customers' problems, not your own vision of what a tech company could look like. And I just had this idea that it could be like Tinder for old people, pairs them with companions. So you could swipe right, swipe left, and choose a pal, and they would come over and spend time with you. So I spent about 5 months building the app. I actually outsourced the team in Argentina and just built this vision of like a Tinder for old people focused on companionship and support and kind of caregiving. And it didn't work that well. But if you put the happy path and click the buttons exactly as I hoped you would, it worked perfectly. But the challenge was older people weren't super technically advanced or technically capable. And so I started going after families. But I really begged people to use Papa, begged, like knocking on doors, asking friends, family members, couldn't get one user. And eventually I got my friend Erica, who had to talk to her parents and her brother and her siblings and her cousins and all these people that were involved in caring for her grandmother, Olga. And eventually I got Olga to use it. And the only way they could use the app was clicking exactly as I told them over the phone, explaining one by one to Erica on how to use it, and then charging her, and then getting a pal to show up. And what we quickly realized, it's great to have a Tinder application, but that only works if you have a supply that is available and ready. And so we realized that
For sure.
wasn't something we had, but we didn't want to rebuild the app. So instead of rebuilding the app, we just made one profile. And every time someone selected our profile, the one that existed, it would ping me, and then I would text the 10 pals that we had in the system, essentially begging them to do the visit, and then to get them to do a visit with Olga. And so we did that, and it worked well with a lot of hand holding, but it did work well. And Olga, just like Papa, my grandfather, absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm. So you found a very unique way to solve the chicken and egg problem. Like you didn't follow any like typical strategy that are recommended nowadays, which is absolutely
Yeah, I probably should have
amazing.
looked elsewhere for how things are done, but I think I just come from my own cloth, and I didn't either realize or think that was the thing. At the time, there wasn't so much information on how to build a company, and I just maybe cocky or confident, but thought I could figure it out. And the truth is, a lot of it is just figuring it out, just still today, every day, just figuring it out. There's not a really good roadmap that exists for Papa. There's the roadmap maybe of things that worked or didn't work, or Paul Graham's isms. But funny enough, we were actually in Y Combinator with Paul Graham. He was there for that summer, and we actually took the opposite of his advice, which ended up being right.
Just never trust everything Y Combinator tells you. That's the lesson. So back, maybe joke aside, maybe coming back to your background. I know like you worked in sales. How did that help you when turning your idea into a working service?
It helped me tremendously. And honestly, without my experience, I wouldn't be here today. Papa started off as a consumer service and quickly pivoted or evolved to selling to health plans. And at the time, no one even knew what that was or why you would do that. And that was actually the argument I had with Paul Graham. He said, why would you not go after consumers? Why would you go after health plans? And we just fully disagreed with him. And frankly, it was mostly because of my experience. At MD Live, I was responsible for selling our software and our service to health plans, employers, our software to health systems. And so that was kind of my background and know-how, but no one in Y Combinator had ever sold to a Medicare Advantage plan. I would even go to venture funds and they said, why are you going to health plans? And now 8 years later, it became the standard way to grow, senior care, Healthtech, all of those things, and that's all because MD Live was doing that 14 years ago before anyone was selling to these channels. And so I had this like secret insight that I doubled down.
Okay, very cool. And I've seen somewhere that you started with a tech team based in Argentina. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if that's the case, I'll be very curious to understand more. How and why did you decide to start with a team which was somewhere else, and how did that work for you?
Most names were not that well thought out. It was just like taking one step at a time. And honestly, at the time, I knew no engineers. No one I knew engineers. I lived in Miami, which I still live in. So the engineering culture was nascent, better now, but still pretty nascent relative to others. And so I heard my cousin knew a guy that knew a guy that knew a guy in Argentina. And so it was more like taking what we could get. Before them, I had tested out with an engineering that ended up being terrible. Couldn't really build what they said. It was the guys that came out of a early kind of coding school. And so when I am telling me we're building in React Native, and I'm like, I have no idea what this. That sounds great. But that was also the early days of React Native. And I remember we're building the app, and you go to click in and you go to next screen, and the whole app just goes off the screen, and you're just like on a blank page. Later realizing that was some of the early issues with React Native, which have now been solved. And of course, we have pretty deep knowledge on how to develop in that language and platform. And so, yeah, they were great to build the MVP. Funny enough, those guys went on to be CTOs to really pretty impressive companies. So I think they cut their teeth on Papa, but it was good enough to get us to what we needed, which was a product in the hands of our users. And I was always very comfortable with this product. I didn't mind that it didn't work perfect. I didn't mind that we didn't have to, I didn't mind not rebuilding it to fit his new vision or new approach with the supply and the way we handled it. I just very naturally and scrappy. And so, funny enough, the hardest thing as I've scaled the business is to not lose my scrappiness, but also we're, a corporation now. We have hundreds of employees, structure, all of those things. But I will admit that we lost our scrappiness for a while there, and I brought it fully back,
Okay.
or 90% back.
And like today, if you had to start again, would you, or if you were advising someone younger, would you advise to outsource the development to build an MVP initially? Like, do you think it can be also an issue to have engineers that are not sitting next to you and building an MVP? And this question, I think, is also relevant because now we have some AI tools like Lovable, this kind of thing. So if you had to start again, what would you do?
I would probably have a CTO from the beginning full time.
Okay.
I think it's critical to have technology. We're a tech company now. We have a full engineering product team. Everything is tech enabled. There's not one thing we think about, from a non-product lens. It's always from a product perspective. So I would say ideally, have that internally. But the truth is, I think you could over-index or over-analyze or over-try to figure out some perfect thing. It's just whatever you could do to make it work at the time. So at the time, I couldn't afford an engineer. My co-founder wasn't an engineer. I didn't know any engineers, and I needed to get to 0 to 1. So you could almost think about the Argentina team like Lovable before Lovable.
Please.
It was AGI with
Speaking Spanish. So you mentioned about the early days of Papa that you originally focused on the elderly, but they were having troubles using the platform, maybe from a user experience, user design standpoint. So you switch your persona to adapt it to a more tech savvy one. How did you approach this? How did you bounce back, and what did you think about, when building for that person?
Well, we actually didn't change the persona. What we realized was the person requesting and using our service, both consumer when we did that, which we don't do today, and health plans, the end user was the senior. The person requesting service was the senior. So yes, I want them to be tech enabled, but the truth is you got to build for what your members and your users and your personas want and need. Ours needed and wanted a phone number. So they called us, and then we focused most of our technical enhancements around the operations. So they call, there's a portal where our call center can schedule, track, manage everything. And then that went and goes to the pals, which have an Uber-like experience. They're all tech enabled. 100% of it does go that way. Only 6 years after we launched did we actually make a member portal. And now 12% of our users use that. Half of them use their pal to schedule on their behalf. And then about half of them use our call center still. And so though I want to have them be tech enabled, I should be building for them, not for my tech dream.
All right. Very, very interesting approach. So did you start as you mentioned, you started just as a service before being a tech company because you just wanted to solve that problem to your grandfather? You didn't know if that would be a tech company from the beginning, but like, how did that vision grow? And especially with the go-to-market, because like, how do you balance with being a tech company with not being a not tech, non-tech company? Like, what did that change for you in terms of the sales at the beginning? Like,
I think it's more important to solve your problems. So I have a personal vision to be a tech company, but my problems were people are calling us too much. We're not filling visits. The pals are not high quality. How do you manage all of those things? And we take it from a product tech oriented lens. So if you have 50 things you have to do, you kind of measure it based on what are the things will be most impactful to our users and to our business. And so we spend most of our time tech enabling operations. So instead of every schedule being over the phone, it's automated through our system. Instead of our pals having to be texted with information and address, they have an app. We only later went to the final piece, which is members, because our members are becoming more tech enabled. They're asking for it. And it solves a problem that they have and we have. The problem we had is it's costing a crazy amount of money to schedule a visit. It's like 3 calls to do 1 visit. We got that down to half call now. We'd like to get it down to half that. But that doesn't mean we're going to replace call center, but maybe we will with voice AI. And so we essentially take all of these manual processes and just chip away at them over time, focusing on 1 big chunk at a time or 2 big chunks at a time. So 8 years later, we're a tech company.
that's cool. How companies change. I think that's kind of how Workday started as a service company for HRs. Then they went to a product for their persona, which was basically HRs also. But
Exactly.
different story. But yeah, I mean, you should always. I've heard that people should always start doing the service before starting a tech company. Do you agree with that?
I think it's all about the problem you're trying to solve. Like Instacart, their first visits was a phone number, a piece of paper, a guy in a car, going to the grocery store, collecting the stuff, going to the house, getting it checked. Same deal with Airbnb. You could spend all this time building this amazing tech, but then are people going to use it? Did you build the right tech? And so there's an easier way when it comes to service delivery, manual.
Yes.
And that's fine. But you could have that end goal of becoming automated. I mean, even like Scale AI, it's a tech company. No one would deny that. But I think for the first 5 years, it was just people in call center, mapping photos and
Yeah.
label.
They were just doing data labeling. Yeah, yeah. It was. I think it was. They were all in Africa or I don't know, in Pakistan. They just had like people outsourcing, like they're doing the data labeling manually and selling it to those big tech companies before. Yeah, they've been a real product.
And now they're running the AI team at Meta. So I think it's more about like where you started, where you're going, don't have to be the same. And when it comes to tech enabled services, I think it's even more critical to start off as a service because the amount of random things and nuanced things that could happen in a visit, it's hard to even imagine. I go to your house, my tire pops, I lose directions, I didn't leave my house on time. I get there, the member hates me, their house is a disaster, they're yelling at me, it's the wrong house, all these things. So how do you bring that all into tech day one? Impossible. You have to like map out all the different things that exist and then slowly chip away at tech enabling it. You may have scheduling and coordination and things like that, but when it comes to nuance, especially this, you have, if I'm building Notion and I'm like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if my people could like bold this or change this color, fine, you could put it out there, test that, get feedback. Our feedback results in somebody not getting a PAL, the member hating it, the helpline getting a call. There's all these things that are downstream, very negative or very positive. And so I can handle all of that with service and then say, okay, wow, if I remove this, I save $1 on my cost by automating this or making it self-service. But now I know the 50 things that are required in order for that to work. Versus before, I'm kind of just guessing and experimenting with real people's lives.
Yeah. Just going back to the sales part. I think from early on, you started to work with and partner with the biggest insurance companies and health insurance companies in the US. How did you just land those first big partnerships in such like a short amount of time? Because we all know that those enterprise deals are just super long to get into. Like it's like a year. It takes a year, at least 9 months. So how'd you get that?
A lot of cold calling, pushing the rock up the hill, and then timing. So right when I started to pitch the health plans, they got a little bit of extra money from the government. The rules changed to allow for companion care, and I was the only one who knew about it. And so I would talk about it the same as like skiing on Christmas, busy as hell, or skiing the next week, no one there. And so we just focused on this area that no one in the industry really understood. The tech world didn't know it at all. And then I was, an expert at understanding the pain points that health plans had. They want to engage their members. They want them not to be lonely. They want them to go to their primary care visits. They don't want them to go to the hospital. They want them to retain with the health plan. Of course, a friendly, caring person that helps with all that would be a big win. And so we just, from a timing perspective, while pushing the rock up the hill, while all these changes happen, we kind of had the perfect product and rode the wave.
So once you have a perfect product, is that when you start telling yourself, I need to operate in different cities? Because we know you now operate in 7,000 cities, in over 7,000 cities. Like what was your playbook for scaling? How did you approach?
It was pretty simple, actually. And it still is the same. We sell a health plan, let's say in Georgia. We have no pals. We know we can recruit pals in like 4 days. And we got really good at like rapidly recruiting, onboarding, training, all that, and then having them in the app. When the app goes up, if there's no visits, the pals will drop off. So we perfectly time it. The health plans give us a list of members. We start our process, and then we start enrolling members. The first visit will be 10 days out. The second, 7. The third, 3. And then the engine keeps going. And we're not on demand. We're scheduled. So it gives us a lot of control of when and how and all those things. And the members are generally malleable unless it comes to doctor appointments. So I'm just coming to hang your house. Can we do it Thursday instead of Tuesday? They're generally going to be okay with it. So it's more about the supply, the PAL, and their schedule and availability and location and your background language, all those things. And so we literally would be pitching to health plans. They'd say, we want to open up in Georgia. We would get a contract in place. And because health plans, there's always a 90-day implementation timeline, gave us more than enough time to scale. And so really quickly, we went from 0 health plans to 1 to 10 to 20, et cetera, et cetera. And we really went across the country because of that. And so if you're like, I want to open up in Idaho, we could say yes, because even if we're not there, we have this process. So we solved the chicken and egg problem by getting, a lot of eggs through membership and demand that was coming from the health plans. And that's why consumer is something that's so challenging, because you're like, get one, then you get another, but it's really hard to get it going. And so companies like Uber are spending, millions and millions and millions of dollars just to get going. We don't have to do that. Our cost to start is effectively 0 because we immediately get paid, and then we solve the filling of the visit.
Okay. And talking about this go-to-market strategy of going to enterprises and to health plans, how do you because it's also something that is nowadays we are mostly talking about tech companies, and I know you mentioned that you are kind of a tech companies, but how can you, it's not only tech, so how can you be sure to measure your success basically and to have the right analytics with a company that is partially or a lot actually out of the outline, not online basically. So how do you keep track of the analytics? Because I've seen a lot of things for example, the fact that you Papa led to 20% fewer emergency room visits, this kind of thing. So how do you make keep track of this kind of analytics, basically? Yeah.
So one, it's very challenging. But we figured it out kind of. It's an ever-changing, ever-evolving component. The way we figured out the emergency room department is we compare before and after, or two cohorts of people, the health plan set of data, and say the non-public cohort spent X, the public cohort spent 20% less. What was the reason? ER visit, readmission, whatever it may be. And so that's been easy in comparison to some things, like how do you know exactly what happened on the visit? The pal's in the house, they have an iPhone or an Android device, but the whole time they can't just be on their phone, they're hanging out. And so we're building this thing called the outcomes engine that brings in feedbacks, loops, analytics, and response from members, health plan data, and the PAL themselves. And then we have methods to see accuracy. So for example, we just launched in-home assessments. Anyone could add an assessment, but how do you know it's accurate? How do you know the member wants to do it? How are the PALs doing consistently? So we have different measuring methods through our data platform and analytics, and then also feedback from our users, members, and PALs. And then we check it against their quality scores. So if this PAL is low quality, one, they'll be off the system, but maybe their quality is low because they're not answering the assessments. Well, we may know that theirs is not as accurate as someone that's consistent. And so we try to use that data, feed it back into the system to understand how do we get our feedback loops tighter and more accurate. So we're doing a lot there. That's probably going to be the next 6 months of focus, is what we're calling the outcomes engine. Step one was assessment. Step two is coordinating things. So I want these members to go to the doctor. How do we know it was us that got them to the doctor? Well, we have GPS tracking. So we know the PAL was here, now they're here. This is the address of the members talking about. We pull that into a report and share it back to the health plan. And so we believe becoming the most accurate, high quality in-home care network at scale requires all of these components, which I think of as the foundation, which I thought was going to happen years ago, but it truly took 8 years. First, the logistics, the quality of the network, the matching, and then now it's the impact.
Okay, and maybe just one question, because I don't think we touched a lot on that part. How do you actually find the PAL, like initially, like the right people? Because I can guess, like when you start this kind of business, or you just post, you make post on random Facebook group, this kind of thing. But when you actually become such like so big, like how do you make sure that you can find the right people? Because it's quite, I guess it's quite rare to find people that just want to apply to this kind of job. So how do you find them?
Well, I think the secret sauce to Papa, funny enough, is what we removed from our service. We removed bathing and toileting, which is traditional home care. We're now adding it back, but that's where we started.
Okay.
And that means that anyone on this phone can be a PAL. If you're nice, you drive, you have a clean record, you go to the training, you're interested, with many people are. They may not want to bathe in toilet, but they want to hang out and help out seniors. And so it's a new network of people, an untapped network of supply that we were able to tap into. And so it was actually something that was relatively straightforward. We started online and all those things. But then Hubba became a big brand name, not only for health plans and members, but PALs. It's a new type of job that didn't exist before. So we've had millions of people apply, millions. We probably have 300,000 PALs that have been onboarded and about 30 or 40,000 that are active on a quarterly basis right now. And so funny enough, we actually had to put up a wall because too many people were applying. We even went viral a few times, like crazy viral, with no money, no investment, on accident. Because our PALs are so passionate about it, they go on a TikTok, they create a video of their great experience helping an old person on Christmas, getting them food, they're alone, like it's pretty powerful. We had one TikTok that went like wildly viral. It had like 400,000 comments on it. And so funny enough, we didn't need any PALs. We turned our background check system that week as a test. It actually ended up costing like $500,000 of people we didn't need. So we had to put the wall back up. But PALs have always been something we've understood how to bring in, and it's a very attractive job. Super flexible, we get to help people, and we generally pay more than home care.
Okay, very interesting. And actually, while we'll talk about the like your virality and how you get to be famous, basically, how did you? I would be very curious to understand how did you manage to get this domain, because papa.com is like something very cool, especially as Jonathan, Matteo, and I are French, so we know how hard it was, I guess, to get this papa domain. So what's the story behind the domain? Did you manage to get it?
Yeah, Papa, like in every language, is Papa.
Yeah.
So it's a long story, but I'll give the short version. We started off as joinpapa.com. I, of course, thought of papa.com right away, but it was $7 million. So I couldn't do that. Every year I would ask the guy, it was a park website, and he would just ignore me, or I'd offer him $1,000. And then he would say 10 million. Every time I went 2,000, he would go 12 million. So it was a complete chance. So then after our Series D or C, sorry, I bought Papa.co, which wasn't cheap, but wasn't crazy. And I was super excited about it. I'm like, okay, that's close enough. However, in my industry, healthcare, health plan, old school, they didn't remember Papa.co. They found Papa.com. So they went to Papa.com. The website was dead or whatever, like just kind of like a placeholder. And they thought we shut down. And I'm like, oh my God, this is such a problem. So then randomly, I saw the guy, Papa.com, lowered his buy now rate from 7 million to orders of magnitude less, way less. Still expensive, but I just closed my Series D that week. I called my CFO. I said, dude, and he approved, and we got it. And it was one of the coolest domain names you could possibly get. I just love telling people we're Papa.com, PAV.com. And I do believe we us, but probably not as much as like a consumer-facing brand, which we're consumer-facing, but we're selling B2B to C. But honestly, Papa.com is very badass. I hated Join Papa. The help is Join Papa. They didn't get the join was like a typical thing tech company had. So we got Papa.co, Papa.com, PapaPulse.com. You know, I buy domains all the time. So I'm very happy.
Super interesting story, and I think, you know, if I want to get rich, I need to buy the domain mama.com ASAP before you buy it.
Mama.com, I want that.
No, joke aside, and because we're running out of time, let's you mentioned, like, for example, 3 million people applying for Pulse position. That's a lot. It's a huge number. How do you like make sure that they fit into your culture? Like, what do you like? How do you like embed that spirit into the culture when hiring them?
So Papa has like 20 steps to onboard the PAL. It's been advancing every year since we started. Originally, we used like an off-the-shelf tool, but it helped us for a while. We had to build our own version. Papa's user experience, Papa's needs, Papa's kind of style and compassion and all those things. We take people through standard things like background check. We use AI-enabled TSA level ID verification. We actually built our own background check anomaly system because background checks are inherently flawed and these AI systems get it wrong sometimes. So we built our own version of that. We do interviews, chat-based interviews that are AI-based, and humans assess them. And we're looking for passionate, caring, thoughtful people. They go through training and quizzes and answers of why they want to do this. Of course, they have to upload their payroll information. So it's like 30 steps. And then once they join, we monitor the hell out of them, where they are, how long they've been there, what they're doing, what their reviews were, good, bad, and ugly. We have to use AI to check reviews, because members will put in reviews like 1 star. I love the member. I love the PAL, sorry. You know, because they don't know the star system. So we had to create our own versions of these things and anomaly detection. But honestly, the PAL network has been amazing. There's a lot of passionate, caring people that just didn't know this existed. It's the perfect job for my mom. She doesn't want to work that much. You know, she wants to hang out with people. She's lonely herself. She's almost 65. And so it's a perfect opportunity for her to kind of give it back. My grandma passed away. She doesn't have anyone to care for her. I'm getting old. And yeah, so it's something we found, this niche of people, which isn't that niche, millions of people that I think wanted to work, but never wanted to be a nurse, never wanted to go back into the typical workforce, are never going to be a DoorDash driver. And we've been able to find our niche there. But if a pal does anything wrong, which is very rare, and usually it's around being late or not accepting visits or canceling visits all the time, we remove them from the system. We actually built a PAL scoring system automatically based on about 100 factors, and it's monitoring it all day long.
So those processes were those workflows of like hiring and like scaling the processes. You started that from like I know it's an iteration game. You keep iterating on the workflows and how to do it better and better and better to humble people improve the workflows. That's kind of the culture. But we also know you're based in Miami. And what's it like building a tech company in Miami? And why not staying in San Francisco even after doing YC? Well, the talents are there. You became a tech company. I know you weren't a tech company at first, but when you applied to YC, you had this vision of becoming like this new Instacart or Airbnb for like a lot of people. So why not staying there with the top talents? And how hard is it to get a company in Miami now? I mean, I know it's getting better, but more for Web3 and
So the reason I moved back to Miami truly is personal. I love Miami. This is my home. I tried to live in San Francisco. I love being there for 6 months. It's not my home. So it was more about that than anything else. Not sure that's a good decision, but that's where it landed. We started to build out of Miami. We had 100 full-time employees here, but over time, mostly we're remote. So we're all over the country. We run the company completely remote. Slack is our office. I'm at my home office, my home DJ office room. And I do have a little space, but we're all over the place. We have people in 35 states, and we just hire the best talent wherever they are. I'd say in the beginning, it's going to all be together, which we had, but we figured out a way to be a flexible kind of remote company. I will admit the talent from an engineering perspective in Miami is not nearly the quality as other markets. But at the same time, San Francisco is not 100%. There's other people in other markets. We have engineers from Nebraska that'll go toe to toe with any open AI engineer any day of the week, and are just more passionate about what we're doing, and also like living in Nebraska. And so I think that talent has been democratized. We are all US based, but frankly, I would like to hire people outside of the country. There are some elements that make it difficult with Medicare. But for me personally, it's been fine. I would say I'm naturally comfortable in this type of an environment. I've actually been a remote employee my entire career. So it was just something I was very comfortable with. But we highly encourage people to pick up the phone, huddle. We are 100% on camera. There's never a meeting where not 100% of people are on camera, except for maybe town halls because people are futzing around. But it's worked for us. If I could start again, I'll probably start in person at first and then kind of go remote from there.
okay. So you have no more office, no office expenses. And
No,
how
no office expenses. I saved $500,000 from that
per month, maybe.
per year.
Yeah.
Maybe $1
Depends.
million.
Wow. Yeah, that's so how do you like reinvest that money? Did you guys organize like offsites for the whole teams? Like
Yeah, we're going to Utah, actually, Park City, with all employees in 2 months. We also do leadership team meetings every month in person somewhere. So in 2 weeks, we're going to Nashville, where like 3 of my leadership team members are. Funny enough, Nashville's becoming a big area for us just by chance. So we're like, okay, we'll get like a mini office in Nashville. So we're very comfortable with like, we don't have to be one way or the other. We're just whatever makes sense at the time. Or for the future is good with us. But we try to encourage in person. So we have 20 people in New York. We have 15 people in LA. They're doing happy hours. They're doing meetups. They're going to WeWorks. But even if we wanted everyone to go in person, half the people don't work on the same team in the same location. So I can be next to you physically, but we're not working together really. So it's worked out for us, and all that savings goes towards, more engineers, more salespeople, more operations, money to the bottom line for future growth.
And maybe just one question about that, because like, how do you make sure that people actually work? Like that basically they get things done. Like when you have such a big companies, you cannot be behind everyone, setting like a very specific goal to each person. So how do you make sure that people work even if they are not there, basically?
We are very document heavy, and it's
Okay.
very obvious if you're not working. It's very team oriented at Papa. Kind of everyone's here to help. We're a companionship company, so we're all very friendly and engaging, and you could easily tell when somebody's not working. But we don't really seem to have that problem. They're documenting everything they do. So if I don't talk to anyone, I can just look at the document, see what's happening. All the channels are open. We have no private channels. So it's the best example, of how we're managing it. And I think it's even better than in person. If I went fully in person, I would still require documentation. So when I'm on the weekend wondering about something, I look it up and I could pull it up. I could edit it. I could comment it on it. I operate in founder mode almost, however you want to call it. I'm just one of the employees. I'm part of the team. I'm adding color. I'm adding sauce, and it's very open in that way. And we're doing more documentation, more and more and more, not just to document, but so we can track and manage and edit and work together in a very collaborative fashion. So I don't think anyone's quite quitting, but before we had that level of documentation, people were. And it became more obvious. We started to add that, and those people aren't here anymore.
And just to understand it maybe a bit further, like what kind of documentation are we talking about? Like you set goal and people like just use Notion and put everything they are doing on a daily basis? What kind of documentation are we talking about?
Well, we leverage OKRs. So we have 3 OKRs every half. That's
Okay.
it. Maybe 4, but that's it. And
Okay.
so you're only supposed to be working on those 4 things. And so the document, for example, if we want to lower the amount of calls that come to the call center through technology, there's a document with that goal and the notes and the meetings, and everything is tracked in this one document in Google Sheets or Google Docs and or Notion, sorry. And so there's just everything is focused around those goals. No one's doing random side quests.
Okay, makes sense. Okay.
Okay, cool. What's like now back on the, let's say, more tactics. What's one tactic I should absolutely repeat if you were launching another, let's say, company or mission-driven startup today?
I would repeat,
Yeah.
probably learning what our users need and what drives metrics. I think a lot of the time in the beginning, people do what they need or want, and they ignore some of these things that are screaming loud and clear through metrics and data. And you want to measure both metrics and then leverage your gut. But what's interesting is I'm more of the gut and the company is more of the metrics. And so we pair that together to make those good decisions. I'm not always right. They're usually right. But sometimes my gut supersedes. So I'd say understand your users is critical. The other thing that I would do is raise the bar for hiring. I think in the beginning, we had a very high bar. But then as we grew like crazy, you're just like anyone who'll answer the resume or put the resume in. If they seem competent in any way, shape, or form, we would hire, because we needed to hire like 35, 40 engineers in like 90 days. And that was all wrong. So I think it's hire slow, fire fast type of a mindset is something I would implement earlier. Whereas now the bar is so high, I joked that I couldn't get a job at Papa.
I think very, very interesting practices. I'm sure, there is a lot to learn about your experience for wannabe founders. About, for example, right now we live in an age where everything is being rethought, especially with AI. You mentioned early on that you were using data science to, for example, classify customer reviews about the pulse, and maybe going deeper with everything we are seeing with AI. How are you rethinking yourself and your business over the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I still think about it the same way as what problems are we trying to solve? I think AI through AI branding or press release is useless. So one of the biggest things we're trying to solve now is how do we deliver outcomes at scale? Well, AI is a great tool for that. It can make recommendations to our providers. It could follow up with our members. It could summarize visits to our doctors that we work with, et cetera, et cetera. So does it help achieve our goals? And honestly, a typical software may do it better or maybe not. And so we take that lens on everything. But now, versus before, our first question is, could AI do this? And so a great area for us where AI makes a lot of sense is voice AI for scheduling, because people do call. That's one area I'm actually looking at pretty deeply. Another area is, though 90% of our visits are automated, there's still quite a big visit success team. And we want to automate that. But I'm not sure you could fully automate it. But a great use case is to power them with agents. Because all these tasks they're doing, we still want them to do those tasks, but we want to get 100x out of them. So instead of growing that team double, triple every year, keep it the same size, but empower them with these skill sets. So the way we would think about AI first is, what impact will it make to our users or to our health plans or to our pals? At the same time, I have a vision that will add companion AI, where you'll have a pal in person, and then you'll have your AI pal who will follow up over voice and say, hey, Matteo, you just know the Andrew, how are things? Are you lonely? And if there's a need, that triggers something else in our system. So I'm also exploring that pretty deeply. The truth is, though, will seniors use that? You could build the coolest thing ever. If you build it, they may not come.
That's true.
Even with the coolest voice?
Maybe if it's your voice with a little French accent, that could help.
For sure. The way we think about it with Tolly, because basically we build AI agents, so that's subject we really know with Gary. Especially with voice AI, you shouldn't try to replace a human, because other people are just gonna not notice it at first and gonna get really mad because the AI answers as an AI, not as a human. So we usually say just like this hook of like, hey, I'm just the AI assistant of Papa, for example.
Exactly.
I don't know how do you answer to that. If it was,
Well, because our vision is to empower the home and to make the best in-home platform. So that's our key. And actually, it's a special thing. Everyone else is trying to be AI and virtual and digital first. We're digitally enabled. And so as a pal co-pilot is very powerful. And my guess is we'll start off with one major use case outside of what we're doing, using voice, probably starting with scheduling, see how it goes. And if it's going swimmingly, we'll think about our next use case. But we are thinking a lot and investing more behind AI. But I'd say in comparison to others, we're very focused on solving our problems, not just throwing AI into a bucket.
and so we're going to do you hire people to, because you also have a very complex roadmap, I guess, or just a big tech to scale. Like, do you ask for engineers internally? You have someone dedicated to like scaling your internal operations, or like say you're gonna build AI agents for internally, or it's just someone else that you're gonna, it's just your engineers or your AI engineers, software engineers. You just gonna tell them, okay, on your extra time or your spare time, you're just gonna work on that project for us internally. How do you like manage that time internally also?
We do everything from a very focused perspective. So if it's not an OKR, we ain't doing it. And so one of the OKRs would have to be leverage AI to reduce cost, leverage AI to engage members, leverage AI to power the pals in order to make XYZ impact. So, and it may not even say leverage AI. It would likely just say, do the measurement, and we would influence them. AI could be a good use case to consider. But if it's not better than other options, we're not going to push it. However, I expect that we'll have like some AI dedicated OKRs next half.
Okay. And maybe one question about the OKRs, because I understand from what you're saying that you're very OKRs oriented. So, first, like, is it something that can be implemented, you believe, for very small companies like of like a few founders and some engineers and maybe some sales? Like, do you think it can, like, the strategy of having clear OKRs can be implemented from the beginning? And also, like, even for a startup that has already some years behind like yours, how do you handle basically the unexpected event that can occur and manage both like the OKRs that were predicted and the unexpected events that can occur, basically.
Yeah, so I think OKRs are a great framework. There are other frameworks. If I was starting from scratch, I would start with what we at one point did called bets. It's very similar, but like let's say there's 10 bets. You try to theme them, revenue, cost, whatever, and do bets. Because when you're small, you probably have to do 50 things. There's no way to just do two. But you also want to rank them properly and focus. And so we would say, okay, for the next 6 months, let's try to accomplish these 6 bets. So it's a type of OKRs, maybe not perfectly organized in that way. That's how I would do it. When it comes to like balancing like things that happen, which that is a lot, we actually document what we call keep the lights on, which is what are your activities that you have to do, Gary, or the team of Gary, in order to keep the lights on. So during the OKR process, we also document those and we leave some leeway to be able to do that. And oftentimes we'll take a break from everything. The next 2 weeks is a cleanup sprint and you do nothing else for that 2 weeks and do that. And then you go back. We do that usually once a half.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, now just to close up the episode, because I think we had a lot of content now. It was super cool and learning your story. Now we're just gonna wrap up with some quick fire questions. Answer the most concise way you can. So what's the biggest lesson you learned the hard way building Papa?
I think you just got to do stuff. Just do things.
Okay. One startup or any other care or digital health you're keeping an eye on right now?
I'm keeping an eye on Sword, Spring Health, and Hinge Health, and Amada.
Founder music for founders.
Music for founders. I personally like classic rock and Bob Dylan. Gets to the soul.
Good choice.
The most underrated founder skill.
Just breaking down walls. Just running through them as hard as we can. If you break your leg, just run through it again. I guess resilience.
What will be one tool or framework that you can't live without?
One tool?
Tool or framework as well, it depends on.
Oh, framework. Well, tool is notes. The notes app for me is the top. I mean, my notes will probably tell you everything you need to know about Papa and my future and me personally. A framework that I created, I call it the resolution ladder. So a lot of times the smallest thing in a business becomes the biggest thing. I call it the tyranny of the minority, where it actually has more value and no one even cares, but a lot of buzz. So I created a resolution ladder. You start at, the rung one, you talk to your coworker, you try to solve it. You can't, you go up to the next rung. If needed, you tell the leadership team openly, we're not going to bite, not too hard. And so the resolution ladder is like the steps you take to solve problems.
A book or podcast that meaningfully shaped your thinking, except 0 to 1, of course.
That was a good book. The Lean Startup, I'd say. Benjamin Franklin, the book by Walter Isaacson, helped me shape my thinking in an interesting way as well.
What advice would you give a 22-year-old founder launching a company in 2025?
So I not to overanalyze everything, especially if you're going 0 to 1. Just keep trying things until it works. It's not going to work that well. Just keep going. Eventually it should work. Listen to your customers and pivot as appropriate.
Do you believe that companies, the biggest companies, because you mentioned that Instacart just started as a delivery, like kind of small delivery business. Your business started just as something to help you with grandpa. We know that Airbnb was just Brian Chesky and his roommates trying to make ends meet at the end of the month, and they just put air mattress and hosted people during a conference in San Francisco. So do you think the biggest ideas, especially in like marketplaces, come from like the most random things and you shouldn't look for them? Or you think that there's also this part of you that, like, you think that if someone just says, okay, I want to build a marketplace or the biggest marketplace in something, should I just try to focus on finding the idea, or it just comes that?
I think it depends. There's 2 ways to think about building a business. I think it's like, what bothers you? If something bothers you, It probably bothers other people. Is it a big problem? Can you solve it? So that's one. The other thing is looking at old antiquated industries and try to vertically integrate them and make it more efficient, tech-enabled, lower cost. I think those are the two main ways. A lot of people take something that has existed, it's a huge budget line at corporations, at healthcare, and say, well, they're spending $1 billion on X. Well, through technology, compared to that antiquated thing, they could spend $750 million. That's one way. The other way is this thing really bothers me.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much for your time. Thank you, Andrew. It was great meeting you and getting
Good meeting you guys.
That's it for this episode of 0 to 1. If this gave you an idea, an edge, or the courage to build, send it to your friend, founder, or your team. Follow us, subscribe, and drop us a DM if there's someone you want to hear next. Until then, keep building, keep shipping, and go from 0 to 1.